Hey, I'm Dan Van Meer. I work at VersaPay, where I'm the director of demand gen, father of four, terrible golfer, rookie guitar player. That's me.
Second question here was within your role as the director of demand gen, um, can you define, at least at VersaPay, how you think about demand gen and how that might differ from the idea of lead gen and growth marketing, or are they all one and the same?
So at VersaPay, demand gen really is more of a kind of full funnel marketing operation. So we view our role as driving and maximizing revenue. Um, we're a small team today, but over time, we're looking to get more involved in customer marketing and kind of really own, or at least support the organization through retention and renewal and those pieces as well. Um, so from a kind of a function perspective, it's interesting. So I think the first big differentiator is demand generation versus demand capture. And I think a lot of people confuse the two. And it often depends on your context. So, there's lots of companies that are operating in mature markets where, you have lots of search interest, lots of brand awareness, and your job really is to make sure that as people search and they're making buying decisions, that you're present, whether it's through like review sites or PPC or all those kind of things. And that's part of our strategy as well. But really at VersaPay, we're early market, still building a brand. And so our role is less demand capture, which we want to do. We want to capture demand 100% of the time when it's there, but we can't grow based on what's there today. So for us, it's about educating the market, really highlighting pain, making people aware of the solutions that are available. And to me, that's kind of more of a demand generation mindset where you got to capture everything that's there. That's kind of the easy wins, but you need to make sure that you're building for the future, kind of playing the long game on top of that as well, so that 12 months from now, you have kind of a top of the funnel that's been built already. I guess the other interesting kind of trend in the market today is this whole emergence of growth. And I mean, I like the idea a lot. I think growth marketing really alludes to the fact that as marketers, we have a responsibility across the whole funnel, and there's growth opportunities at every stage of the funnel through like renewal and retention and all those pieces. One thing I'm not a fan of is growth hacking. So to me, that suggests that there's shortcuts, and inevitably every time you do a search for growth hacking, it usually involves buying some tool that scrapes emails off LinkedIn or sends out 50,000 emails at the click of a button. So I'm a big fan of growth marketing, not a big fan of growth hacking, because everything I've seen suggests that there are no quick, easy ways to win when it comes to marketing. Otherwise, everybody would be doing them; they wouldn't work anymore.
So within growing companies like VersaPay, there's typically a lot of pressure for growth and to hit aggressive revenue targets. It can easily become a grind. It can lead to burnout. How do you personally balance your work priorities with life priorities, which I think you're excellent at? And then how do you build that culture of balance within your team?
Like balance has always been something that's really important to me, and it's been a priority for me throughout my career. And so I think kind of, I've spent some time thinking about why that's important and kind of some of the decisions I've made around that in the past. And I think one of the big things about balancing priorities and avoiding burnout is understanding what your personal definition of success is at every stage of life, and kind of having the wisdom to know that that's going to change as time goes on. If you're a young professional, you're single, you don't maybe have a lot of obligations outside of work. You're in a stage of life where maybe it makes sense to you're working 10 or 12-hour days because you enjoy that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like if you're having fun and you're doing great work, and it's fulfilling, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the danger is that a lot of people are coached and fall into the trap that more is better. That 12 hours a day is a requirement. And what I've seen in myself and in others is that everybody has kind of a peak efficiency, and then things start to drop off after that. So to me, part of work-life balance is also just recognizing that that I can do really good work, and there's a point in time in the day when I stop doing really good work and my efficiency goes down and my quality goes down, and I start to burn out. And so for me, work-life balance is having the wisdom to know what's important at every stage, having the wisdom to know when you need to take a break so that you can come back the next day and crush it at the start of the day, as opposed to coming in tired and burnt out and frustrated. Um, and I mean, so my honest perspective is that the other reason that work-life balance is really important is that as a society, we need people in companies, we need leaders that are just crushing it at work every day, but are also, incredible spouses or partners or parents or community members, because I think that's what pushes us all to be better. Um, so for me, I guess the other tip I have for you is that work-life balance is also, very practical decisions that you make at the start of every week, the start of every day. For me, a big part of it has been making sure that I own my day kind of down into 15 or 30-minute blocks. If there's important work that needs to be done, I'll book it in. Once we started working from home, like I'm sure a lot of you are, it became harder to kind of do that. So I'm like, now I book the first half of my day off every day. I know that mornings are my most productive time when I do my best work and my best thinking. So if I can avoid it, I don't take meetings from 8:30 to 12. And there's always going to be exceptions to that. But meetings are a big time killer, right? And I think the trap some people fall into is that they book themselves into 9 hours of meetings a day, and then you have to work into the evening to get your work done. From a team culture perspective, I guess there's a couple thoughts around that. In terms of fostering a culture that encourages work-life balance, I think is you as a leader own having to get to know your team members, understand what makes them tick, what their passions are, what their goals are, what fires them up outside of work, and then understand some of those patterns and habits that they have, so that if things go sideways, you can kind of watch for when things get out of balance and ask them questions about how it's going, maybe prompt them a bit in terms of how they're feeling, what their workload's like. I think there's also just the practical element of leading by example. When you can log off at 5 o'clock, log off. When, you can get out for a walk at lunchtime, get out for a walk at lunchtime, encourage your team to do the same. I think a lot of leaders talk about work-life balance, but then don't model it, and that makes it hard for teams to follow suit. So I think as a leader, you have a responsibility to know your team, to ask the questions, to make sure that they're keeping things in balance themselves so they can do amazing work for you. But then you have the responsibility as well to really show them that it's okay to kind of have different times in your day for different things, and really model the fact that it's better to cut things off, recharge, and come back the next day versus working till 3 a.m. on something and then paying the price the next day.
You sell into fairly large organizations, which I think is accurate. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah. We're mid-market. We're not enterprise.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about how your tactics change selling into mid-market, upper mid-market versus maybe smaller companies that have a lower ACV?
For us, our strategies, our go-to-market is shaped by a few things. So I guess, primarily it's shaped by the size of companies that we go after. It's shaped by the ACV of our solution, but it's also driven by the complexity of the solution that we sell. So I guess when I say complexity, we don't have a complex solution per se, but we sell a product that integrates directly into a customer's ERP. It involves communication with their customers, and it integrates with their bank and their cash flow. So when we talk about complexity, there's elements of what we sell that take a bit of time to, I think, build trust and kind of prove evidence that, or show evidence that that we can do what we say we can do and do it well. So from a marketing perspective, that has a huge influence on how we think about things and how we go out, because realistically today, you combine all those factors with the fact that we're in an early market still for our type of solution. We win, conversation by conversation at a one-to-one level. And the closer we can get to marketing at that level, the better the results that we see. So for us, when we go to market, we can use sort of broad-based channels to build awareness and to educate the market, and that's part of our strategy. But when we talk about, trying to build funnel and move conversations along, it's very personal. That's what it takes. I think it's kind of a fairly straightforward proposition. You have to understand what you're selling, the time it's going to take to sell that, the value, and the revenue you're going to drive into that sale, and then understand, I think, how much time it's going to get there and how much complexity it takes to do that really, really well. I guess the other big decision that people need to think about just as marketers overall is, are you optimizing your process to streamline it for internal resources, or are you trying to build a process that delivers a really great experience? And so for us, we're really trying to always find ways to build great experiences for our prospects and the people that we talk to, as opposed to just identifying tactics or workflows that work really, really well for our salespeople or for our marketers or anything like that. Because I think the minute you start to optimize marketing for internal efficiency, you're giving up something on the kind of that prospect experience front end, and prospects pay the bills. Internal efficiency doesn't really pay the bills. So yeah, I guess the other piece of this for us is that we're really starting to make a move more towards like brand and education as a longer term play. Part of that was driven by this whole market we find ourselves in today with COVID. I'm sure, like a lot of companies, COVID had some impact on the way you market. For us, what we found is that the volume of leads coming in are way down. The quality of the leads is way up, because the people that we talk to today seem much more motivated to make decisions. But for us, as kind of a longer term play, we've made the decision to focus more on education and brand and building that, so that as companies recover and restabilize coming out of COVID, we're top of mind for the type of solution that we offer. I guess on a side note, it's been interesting. We've made that shift and still see tons of leads that are coming out of what we would traditionally have defined as like top of funnel tactics. So the decision to move towards more of a brand play doesn't mean you're giving up your lead generation. It just looks a little different.
Personally for you, you recently made the jump from manager to director. Can you talk a little bit about that change? Maybe any unexpected differences that come with title change?
So what I found making the move from manager to director is that I think anytime you make a jump up in an organization, the expectations are that much higher on you as an individual. I think if you care about what you do, there's probably a natural sense of more pressure and an increasing level of kind of personal ownership over the outcome. And then I guess the other piece too is that typically as you progress, you have more responsibility for budget and for team members, and you're on the hook for that, right? I think when people choose to work for a company and choose to work for a leader, they're trusting their career to you. So I think as you have people report into you, there definitely is a sense of more responsibility, I think, because you want to hit the numbers, because obviously your comp is probably tied to it, but also because, you have people that you want to see grow and succeed with you as well. So I think, yeah, as you climb the ladder in any business, you're getting closer and closer to just true ownership of what the results look like, true ownership of growing the business. And, hopefully for all of us, we take that responsibility seriously, because it's important for sure.
And then lastly, any books or resources that you recommend for anybody interested in any of the things we talked about, whether that's demand gen, growth, marketing, career shifts, and moving into leadership roles?
Yeah, so I love to read, and there's a couple books that jumped out as kind of, I think, must reads for marketers. So I guess I'll go from like a tactical recommendation through to more like, I guess, kind of leadership type things. So I think as marketers, the big gap that we have today is around copywriting. I think everybody, whether you're a first-year employee or a 15-year employee, should be able to write really, really great copy. And for me, the best book I've read on that is the Adweek Guide to Copywriting. So to me, any marketer needs to read that book. That's a great read. From a leadership perspective, I'm a really big fan of John Maxwell's leadership books. He's written just tons and tons of books on this subject. If you're going to buy one, he wrote one called 360-Degree Leadership. And that's a book that I love, because it talks about leading inside a company no matter where you are. So, whether you're reporting to somebody or you're working with peers or you have a team, that there's an opportunity to be a leader in all those environments. And so he gives really practical advice and suggestions how to lead up, how to lead across relationships, and how to lead a team as well. So if you're going to read one leadership book, that's the one I'd recommend, because it's relevant no matter what stage of career you're in. And then I guess for me, in terms of kind of recent reads, these are more books that I've chosen because you got to know what your blind spots are. So for me, my blind spots are around habit and routine. Those are two things that don't come easy to me. I like to to think about ideas and think about kind of big picture, and then often struggle to break those down into actionable steps. So I try to read books that help me build better habits into my life. And I've one book in particular that I read this year called High Performance Habits. It's sitting on my desk still. That was a great read, very practical. The author's name is Brendan Burchard. And I think you can actually find it online for $7. He'll probably try to sell you a bunch of coaching and videos as you check out for $7, but you can get the book for $7. So I'd recommend that. And then for me, the other piece is that I'm always trying to be a better communicator. I think as a leader in marketing, one of the most underrated skills out there is the ability to give feedback in a direct way. I think a lot of people misunderstand that direct feedback is not being rude. It's not being unkind. It's efficient, right? Your teams need great feedback from you so they can continue to be better. And so for me, one of the books I read around communication was called Fierce Conversations, which is maybe a little more aggressive in terms of the outcomes. But there's a lot of good stuff in there. I just maybe temper back some of the recommendations so that everybody's not mad at each other all the time. But yeah, so those are two books that were relevant for me, that have had a positive impact on how I approach work.
Very cool. Thanks, man.
No worries.